Hey guys! Tonight we drift back into the distant past somewhere between myth and history where you're standing barefoot on a sun-warmed Carthaginian beach, and the waves don't just bring in seaweed or driftwood. No, tonight the frothy tide itself is your fortune teller. The breeze is salt-heavy and warm, the foam gathering in lacy clumps at your feet. Each swirl and bubble might mean good winds ahead, or a storm that sends your ship to the bottom. You're not just watching the sea for fish or trade winds, you're here to read its mood. You probably won't survive this voyage. By the way, statistically speaking, ancient seafaring was basically gambling, except the dice are angry weather gods, pirates, and questionable foam-based logic. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time is it there. Drop that in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet sink just slightly into the damp sand. Carthage, behind you, hums with early morning activity goats bleating, carts rolling, merchants already bartering over amphorae of olive oil. But out here by the water, it's still quiet. A priest in dark robes stands nearby, scooping a cluster of sea foam into a shallow clay dish. You glance at the ship waiting in the Chthon behind him, a sleek shadow silhouetted in the morning sun. It's your ship, your cargo, your voyage, and this foam reading. This is the first real test. You've heard stories, everyone has. That sailor who laughed off a bad foam day and never came back. That other one whose ship was blessed and returned heavy with tin, silver, and some mystery perfume from Gadir. Foam, it turns out, is serious business. The priest holds up the dish, tilts it slightly. The foam shifts. Bubbles burst. He frowns. This isn't looking good. You try not to fidget. Behind him, a novice scribbles something onto a wax tablet using a stylus that's been worn smooth. He glances at you once with a look that can only be described as deeply concerned but also mildly curious about what flavor of curse you're about to get. Eventually, the priest says something you don't quite catch. Phoenician isn't your strongest tongue, and his voice is more breath than words. But you do hear the phrase "foam devours the West." Well, that's probably not great. Still, you're not new to this. You know how much drama Carthaginian rituals can involve? Sometimes it's more theater than theology, and even if the sea foam says doom, there are always counter-rituals. You make a mental note to bribe the harbor priestess before you go. Double incense offering. Maybe 3. Historians still argue whether this practice interpreting foam shapes and sea patterns was truly religious, or just elaborate psychology to manage risk and soothe terrified merchants. Because let's face it, if you're heading off into uncharted waters in a wooden boat held together by twine and ambition, it helps to believe someone or something is looking out for you. You glance down at the foam dish again. One cluster looks vaguely like a crab, or a ship sinking, or maybe a horse. Depends on the angle. Really, the priest seems less than reassured. This part of Carthage, right on the edge of the sacred shoreline, is reserved for ship blessings and sea communion. It smells like salt, crushed herbs, and a bit like wet wool. There are carved stones nearby showing ancient gods of the sea, Yam, Baal, and especially Tanit, the great goddess whose open hands appear on every offering stone. Tanit protects those who leave the land, or so everyone hopes. You follow the priest back toward the Chthon harbor, walking slowly. You pass other merchants, some pacing nervously, others arguing over manifest lists or berating apprentices for forgetting ritual olives. A child with coal-lined eyes sells sea charms made of coral and string. One even has a tiny crab claw tied with red thread. For luck. Apparently, it seems excessive. But then again, so is your entire day so far. At the harbor gate, you stop. One last look at the water. The foam has scattered now, just faint laces clinging to the rocks. It could mean the sea is calm, or uninterested, or hiding its next move. You know the priest will write today's reading into the port archive, a quiet note for the temple accountants, and maybe the city omens list. Your name attached to a line about mildly aggressive foam with western leanings. Comforting. A seagull screeches from above. Landing near the salt-drenched stone wall, it stares at you like it knows something. You stare back, blinking. It hops once, then poops and flies away. An omen. Possibly, but no priest is around to interpret that one. Back on your ship, the crew finishes loading. Amphorae of purple dye, sacks of resin, and a large jar labeled sacred sardines. Do not touch. Someone's brought a liar for luck. Someone else has brought a cousin who's already seasick and hasn't even left the harbor. You stand at the stern, watching the morning sun rise higher. The foam-reading priest raises his hand once more from the dock, this time in blessing, or maybe farewell. Or maybe he's waving at someone behind you. Hard to say. Either way, you nod. The ship shifts slightly under your feet. The ropes are untied, and the sea, that great translator of omens and thief of sandals, waits. You step off the gangplank one final time before launch, your sandals clicking softly on the stone pier, because there's one last thing you want to see before you leave. The city itself, Carthage, gleaming in the morning sun, smells like burning cedar, half-dried fish, and something you can only describe as purple ambition. Behind you, the sea still murmurs. But ahead, oh, ahead is where the real alchemy happens. You head into the merchant quarter, where narrow alleys squeeze between adobe buildings splashed with ochre and blue. Shouts echo from the dye vats, half greetings, half threats, and children dart underfoot carrying baskets of wool. You duck instinctively as one streaks past with a clay jug twice their size. The city pulses like a market drum. Trade, 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 and always that scent, the murex. You round a corner and gag slightly. There it is, the unmistakable stench of crushed murex shells, rotting in great stone vats. This is where purple dye, more valuable than gold, more sacred than saffron, is born. The smell is like old garlic married to low-tide despair. But merchants wear it like a badge. If your tunic has even a thread of Carthaginian purple, people know two things. You have wealth, and you have excellent tolerance for horrific smells. You pass a group of workers, their hands stained a permanent bluish-purple, stirring the vats with long wooden paddles. One sneezes. A splash lands dangerously close to your feet. You dodge, barely. Across the street, incense curls from a tiny shrine set into the wall. Tanit, again watchful, serene. With those open-palmed hands, you drop a small coin into the offering bowl, mostly out of habit. Merchants here are equal parts capitalist and fatalist, because in Carthage, it isn't just about trade routes or weather charts. It's about omens. Every deal, every shipment, every journey must walk in step with the divine, or at least pretend to. You pause outside a cloth shop where bolts of linen and wool hang in rippling rows, dyed in crimson, sea blue, and the prized murex purple. The shopkeeper gives you a nod, half recognition, half evaluation of your coin pouch's weight. You nod back but keep walking. There's no time for fabric today. You're here for something more peculiar. You duck into a side alley where the walls closes in and sunlight trickles down in dusty beams. This is the spiritual undercurrent of the merchant world. Quiet temples, personal shrines, and certain specialists. You reach a low doorway and knock twice. Then once, just like you were told, the curtain lifts, and an elderly woman peers out, eyes sharp despite her years. Her bracelets jingle faintly. "You're the foam boy," she asks, voice scratchy like a gull on gravel. "I'm the captain. You correct?" Gently, she snorts. "Same thing. Sit." You do. The inside of the room is lined with bronze bowls, jars of dried herbs, and so many feathers it looks like someone mugged a heron. She lights something in a shallow dish, probably myrrh, but possibly old boot, and begins to hum. This isn't your first fortune tuning, and yet it still feels like being inspected by a goat that might bite. She reaches into a jar, pulls out what looks like dried squid, and waves it near your face. "Foam's bad this morning," she mutters. "I noticed. You're going west." You nod. She huffs. "Always west. Always where the sea is worst." Historians still argue whether Carthage's obsession with sea-based omens was born out of genuine religious conviction or sheer practical fear of the unknown. Either way, you're here, listening to a woman shake crab shells in a bowl. She throws something into a shallow basin, dried kelp, powdered olive pits, and a tiny amount of something that smells suspiciously like murex sludge. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she adds salt water. It fizzes, foam rises. You lean in, watching. you see patterns. Of course, your brain wants to see them. A spiral, a wave, maybe a ship, maybe a snake. It doesn't matter. What matters is what she sees. She squints, then looks at you again. Long and hard. You'll return, she says finally. Relief washes over you until she adds, but you'll leave something behind. Something that wants to follow. You blink. What does that mean? She's already dumping the foam out the window. Means you will be fine. Foam boy. For now, the consultation ends with her pressing a tiny leather amulet into your hand. Inside is something soft and squishy. Don't open it, she warns. Not unless the sea talks to you. You nod and tuck it into your satchel. Back on the street, you breathe deeply, fresh air. If slightly tinged with sheep, and let the familiar city sounds ground you. Clanging bells from the harbor. A seller shouting about dates. A child singing to a goat. You almost feel normal again. Almost. Because this city is many things: empire builder, trade titan, cultural sponge, but mostly, it's a place where logic and luck hold hands and jump together. Carthage runs on superstition and accounting ledgers in equal measure. You can chart a trade route down to the last knot and still lose your fleet to bad luck and one misread cluster of foam. Still, something about that amulet makes you itch. You press your palm to it once, just to check it's real. It is damp, faintly warm, and humming like it's been watching you longer than you've known it. You sigh and start walking back toward the harbor. After all, purple doesn't trade itself. The Carthaginian harbor stretches before you like a sun-drenched amphitheater of trade, ritual, and deeply questionable superstition. From above, it looks like two near-perfect circles: an outer basin for merchant ships, and an inner sanctum ringed with military docks and warehouse towers. But from here, ground level, it feels more like a temple masquerading as a logistics center. You walk slowly along the edge of the outer harbor. Slaves and sailors bustle past you, some barefoot, some shouting in at least 3 different dialects. You smell salt and tar, figs and smoke, and hear the slap of oars being tested against the calm water. All around you, the city breathes in rhythm with the sea. This harbor, Carthage's engineered pride, wasn't just built to protect ships. It was designed to impress the gods. Every stone of the Carthon is laid with both functionality and cosmic favor in mind. The docks align with certain stars. The inner circle echoes a solar disk. Even the drainage channels are shaped like fish. Historians still debate whether the circular military harbor was modeled after the sun or the eye of Baal Hammon, the chief deity of Carthage. Either way, someone definitely designed this place while whispering to the divine. Your ship bobs gently in its assigned berth, tethered with thick ropes that smell of brine and beeswax. It's a fast galley, with storage deep enough for dye, wine, and a particularly arrogant bronze statue you've been tasked to deliver to a temple in Gaudier. You pat the hull gently. She shivers under your touch, like a cat pretending not to be nervous. Nearby, an official in flowing robes is inspecting vessels for compliance. You can tell by the way he squints at manifests and occasionally sniffs the cargo. This is not just about tax or safety. This is ritual. The official stops at your ship and raises an eyebrow. Foam reading, he asks. Clipboard raised. You nod. Said West was unfriendly, but manageable. He gives a skeptical grunt and makes a note. You can just barely read it upside down. Captain overly confident. Sea ambivalent. He moves on. Before boarding, you must pass through the inner harbor gate, a stone arch inscribed with prayers to Tanit and Baal. You pause, as custom demands, and press your fingers to a small bronze plaque embedded in the wall. It's warm from the sun, polished smooth by generations of sailors doing the exact same thing. A girl, no older than 10, steps out from behind the archway and holds out a clay bowl. You know the drill. You drop in 2 figs, a pinch of ground myrrh, and a shiny copper coin. She nods solemnly, then vanishes back into the shadows like a tiny priestess of commerce. On board, the crew is mid-ritual. Your first mate, short, sunburnt, and extremely superstitious, is burning a rope end dipped in goat fat. It stinks, but tradition says it appeases the sea demons or keeps your ropes from fraying. Possibly both. He nods at you. The sardines are secured. Cargo's been blessed. Don't let the new guy touch the helm. He sneezed during the salt ceremony. You nod. Noted. You walk the deck slowly, touching each rail, each sail line, murmuring the sailor's prayer under your breath. You've done this so many times it's muscle memory. But still, every journey starts new. The sea never forgets. And the foam, as you've learned, has a long memory. At the prow, someone's tied a carved wooden figure of a dolphin holding a grape. It's supposed to represent joy and abundance. But the effect is oddly menacing. You decide not to question it. Some rituals don't need logic. There's a priestess on the dock now, dressed in white linen with a twisted shell necklace. Her job is to perform the final harbor rite, a blessing spoken in a voice just loud enough for the sea to hear, but not so loud that it wakes anything that shouldn't be disturbed. She steps forward. The harbor falls eerily quiet. She raises her arms and sings not a song. Exactly, but a series of vowel sounds that echo across the water like whale calls. Your crew stops moving. Even the birds seem to pause. You watch as she scoops a fresh handful of sea foam into a carved bowl and pours it gently over the front edge of your ship. It sizzles slightly as it hits the sun-warmed wood. Go, she says, but remember, the sea listens better than it speaks. You shiver, not from fear, from knowing. The ropes are untied. The oars dip in unison. The harbor gates, once closed to protect the fleet, slide open with a creak that sounds far too theatrical to be accidental. Maybe someone greased them with olive oil and dreams. Maybe the gates just know when to be dramatic. You drift slowly out of the Carthaginian, passing other ships, some arriving, some leaving, some just bobbing uselessly because someone forgot to bribe the dockmaster. As you cross into open water, the city recedes behind you like a mirage made of salt and commerce. The purple dye stink fades. The chanting hushes. Only the sea remains. You feel the ship lift slightly, buoyed by the swell, the taste of salt thick on your tongue. One of the younger sailors points out foam gathering along the wake, swirling lazily. You pretend not to care, but you watch it anyway, because the foam always knows before you do. You're out now, well past the Kothan's protective embrace. Carthage is a smudge behind you, a trick of haze and sunlight where stone meets sky. The open sea stretches ahead in all directions, shimmering, endless, and slightly suspicious. There's nothing between you and the western horizon except your crew, your cargo, and an unshakable memory of how that foam looked this morning. And now, sitting cross-legged beside the main mast is a priestess with hair that smells of seaweed and dried citrus peel. Her name is Themilkat. She's not part of your crew technically. She's temple-appointed, but she's been on enough voyages to earn her place in her sarcasm. She cradles a ceramic bowl like it's a sleeping animal. Inside, more sea foam. How did she get it this far from shore? You don't ask. You've learned not to question anything involving high-ranking priestesses and mysterious froth. Themilkat stirs the foam gently with a carved stick shaped like a fish spine. You watch her with a mix of curiosity and dread, like someone watching a chef flambe something directly over their eyebrows. Don't lean in, she murmurs without looking at you. Your breath disrupts the bubbles. You scoot back a respectful thumb's width. The foam begins to settle. She tilts the bowl just slightly, letting it slide toward one side. You expect it to splash, but it clings viscous and strange, like sea milk. Then it moves, or rather, the bubbles reorganize, shifting. With that peculiar biological elegance seafoam always seems to have, you spot a spiral forming. Then a double loop. She taps the bowl once. It's watching, she says flatly. The sea, the part of it that watches you, the part that decides if your ship comes home or turns into coral, right? You say, totally normal. She hands you the bowl. It's heavier than it looks. The foam, still moving, seems to tilt toward your fingers like it knows you're not ready. You glance in and see, well, it could be anything. A bird, a broken anchor, a face with too many eyes. It shifts depending on how you hold it. You're supposed to see something. You ask, no, she says. You're supposed to feel something. If it tingles, that's good. If it goes cold, that's a warning. You frown. It's just wet. Give it time, she says, taking the bowl back. It remembers. Historians still argue whether these mid-sea foam readings were symbolic acts or true spiritual diagnostics. Some believe priestesses like Themilkat were early psychologists, using the foam as a mirror to your mind. Others say they genuinely communed with marine spirits. Then there's the camp that insists they were just bored and messing with everyone. Themilkat dips her fingers into the foam, and flicks droplets in 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. One lands on your forehead. Cold, sticky, slightly minty. Your path is unclear. She says, "Oh, good." You reply, "Nice and specific." She smiles for the first time. The sea likes you. It just doesn't trust you yet. You nod solemnly. Like, that makes sense? As she sets the bowl aside, your first mate appears, looking like he just wrestled a squid. "Captain," he says, "we've got an issue. The olive jars are leaking." You groan. Sacred olives. Mind you, blessed, pickled, and packed under strict lunar protocols. Now sloshing across the cargo floor, you descend into the hold, ducking past barrels and amphorae. Sure enough, 2 olive jars have cracked hairline splits right through the sealant wax. Brine soaks into the wood. You touch the wax. It's soft, melting. From what? You squint at the nearest support beam, then at the nearest crewman. Did someone store the jar next to the sunstones? A guilty shuffle. The sunstones, solar-absorbing talismans used for navigation, and if you believe the hype, sun-powered blessings. Great for maps. Terrible for olive preservation. You sigh and make a note to have Themilcat purify the cargo hold later. Or yell at it, or whatever she does that makes the foam stop twitching. Back on deck, the breeze is picking up. You feel it tug gently at your tunic, like a child asking for attention. Themilcat is gone now, probably meditating, or napping in a storage net. The bowl remains, though wedged near the helm. You glance into it once more. This time, you see a shape that stops you, a perfect spiral, turning counterclockwise. Like the drain of a whirlpool, it slowly collapses inward. You look away. Just weather. You tell yourself, the sea doesn't know what you're planning. It doesn't care. But the foam, it's always watching. You spend the next hour on deck, under a sun that's starting to mean business. It glints off the sea in that squinty, overconfident way that suggests nothing could possibly go wrong. Which is exactly when things usually do. But instead of pirates or sudden squalls, your greatest threat this morning is inventory. You're packing, not just crates and amphorae, but symbols, sacred symbols, objects chosen with almost ridiculous precision. Not because they're useful, but because they're required. This is not a trade voyage. It's a tightly choreographed performance in honor of the sea gods, the merchant spirits, and your ship's delicate emotional stability. Every crate is placed according to an ancient flowchart that your first mate keeps rolled up in his tunic. It's water-stained, partially illegible, and the part that mentions avoid iron near dates is either superstition or a very specific allergy no one wants to test. You kneel beside the olive jars again, now resealed with an extra layer of blessed tar and a whispered apology from Themilcat, who claims she saw a sea serpent blink at her in the brine last night. "Did you see it too?" she asks you, very seriously. "Absolutely not," you say, "and I'd like to keep it that way." You move next to the amphorae of resin and wine. There's a sharp, herbal scent leaking from one that smells distinctly like oregano and vinegar. The sailor who packed it swears it's anti-rot formula. Your nose disagrees. Still, you don't question it aloud. That particular sailor has a ritual of tapping each amphora with his forehead before stacking it. You've learned not to interrupt. One crate, labeled only with a spiral, sits quietly in the corner. That's your personal offering. A box of items you'll leave at the temple in Gauder gifts for Tanit, Baal Hammon, and whatever sea creature has decided to make your dreams smell like kelp and cinnamon. You check the contents. One polished obsidian mirror, wrapped in goat wool, a tiny clay statue of a dolphin with wings, symbol of speed and safe return, a sealed pouch of Tyrian purple pigment, and a small jar of sea foam, harvested at dawn, preserved in beeswax and salt. Yes, foam. Again, always foam. Historians still argue whether these foam jars were used purely for ritual or if they doubled as early barometers tools to detect atmospheric changes by the behavior of the trapped bubbles. Either way, you pack it like it's holy. Overhead, a gull screeches. You glance up. It circles 3 times before landing on your masthead. Some say 3 loops means fortune. Others say it means you're about to lose a sail. You look at your rigging, still intact. For now, you secure the sacred items, wrap them in wool-lined baskets, and mark the box with chalk. Offerings. Do not touch. Do not question. Next, the crew's personal charms. One sailor has lashed dried fig leaves to his belt for fertility. No one asked. Another wears a leather thong around his ankle for luck in dice games. You've seen a man tie 3 sardines to a rope and drag them behind the boat to distract sea spirits with snacks. You're not superstitious, but you still carry your grandfather's bone-handled stylus wrapped in flax. He said it wrote truer when the sea was calm. You believe him. It's never lied. You do a final sweep below deck, making sure everything is balanced. There's a subtle geometry to it. Olive oil next to dried fruit, wool far from resin, purple dye above all, always above all. Purple leaks ruin everything. There's a reason it's so expensive. Your first mate joins you. Did you check the wax tablets? He asks. You nod. You've got 3 sets. 1 for trade, 1 for ritual logs, and 1 personal. That last one's half filled with sketches of foam spirals and doodles of what might be sea demons or very angry cats. Did you pack the silver scales? He asks. Yes, the blessed ones. You pause. Blessed, he groans. You can't weigh tribute without priest-approved scales. They'll think you're skimming. You sigh and start unlashing crates. Eventually, you find the right ones. Themilcut appears from the shadows. She has a knack for materializing when someone's doing something wrong and blesses the scales with a chant that involves whistling through a piece of coral. It works. You feel it. The scales hum slightly afterward, like they've been tuned. Packing is done, at least until someone realizes they forgot the sea-salted figs. You stand at the stern, hands on the rail, watching your crew lounge, argue, nap, and polish things that don't need polishing. The ship creaks rhythmically. The sails sigh like sleepy lungs. And then you notice something. Along the edge of the deck, a fine trace of foam clings, not normal sea foam. This is thicker, milkier, almost pearlescent. It hasn't dried. Even under the midday sun, you reach down and touch it. It's cool, slick. It smells faintly of iron and fennel. You look up. Themilcut is already there. She sees the foam, nods once, and says, "We're ready." You don't know if that means prepared, or doomed, or something more complicated. But the cargo is packed. The offerings are loaded, and the sea, as always, waits. Dinner the night before was unremarkable. A clay bowl of stewed lentils, a shared loaf of flatbread, a few salted olives. Nothing unusual, yet here you are now. The morning after, staring down at a cracked olive pit that seems to have arranged itself quite deliberately into the shape of a crescent moon. No one moved it. No one touched it. It's just there, looming on your breakfast tray like it knows too much. Themilcut appears behind you, peering over your shoulder with the kind of disappointed frown usually reserved for people who ignore red flags in romantic relationships or forget to light the incense before a storm. "Oh, that's not good?" she murmurs, picking up the olive pit with 2 fingers like it's a piece of evidence. "Did you swallow the other half?" You shake your head. It's split like that. On its own, she makes a face. Bad split. Crescent split. Could mean moon sickness or drifting too far west. You mean the direction we're going. She shrugs, tossing the pit overboard. Could be worse. Could have landed stem up. You glance at the remaining olives on the tray. They suddenly feel like they're watching you. Carthaginian sailors take omens seriously. Not just the big ones like foam patterns or dreams involving talking dolphins, but the little ones too. Olive pits, bread bubbles, how the oil floats in your lamp that morning. One sailor once refused to leave port because his fish blinked the wrong way. Everyone mocked him until a squall hit the next day, and he was the only one still dry and very smug about it. Historians still debate whether these everyday rituals were religious in nature or a kind of folk science. A system of data gathering so ancient it wore the mask of the mystical. Either way, it governed every bite, every blink, every cracked pit. You finish your meal cautiously, Themilkat sprinkles crushed coriander around your cup of wine before she lets you drink it. Neutralizes sour dreams. She explains, it tastes like regret and spice. Later that morning, your crew gathers for the day's route planning. You sit on a flattened barrel at the prow, squinting at a hide map stretched across a crate. The sun bleaches the ink slowly, like it's trying to erase the future. You've been trained to read maps the old way. Not with precise coordinates, but with rhythms. How the wind behaves near Sardinia. What the birds do before a channel narrows. Whether the sea foam leans left or right when a storm brews. Today's map is streaked with salt. Someone's lunch has bled a fig stain into the north coast of Hispania. You trace your finger along the planned route. Carthage, down past the Balearics, west toward Gadir. A tricky stretch. Not dangerous exactly, unless you're a fan of reading olive pits and foam spirals. Your first mate points out a safer southern route. Themilkat clears her throat. No. The crescent points west. Everyone stops. She stares at the sky, and the gull turned counterclockwise this morning. You sigh. That means west, she says. Definitely west. You don't argue. Because arguing with a Carthaginian priestess about directional omens is like arguing with fire about being hot. You just lose faster. That night, you dream of olives, but they're enormous, rolling across the deck like stones, cracking open with hollow thuds to reveal faces yours, your crew's, the foam priests. One pit speaks in your grandfather's voice. Trade wisely. Sleep lightly. Never trust a fig with teeth. You wake up sweating. Themilkat is already awake, sitting cross-legged beside the foam bowl. You were talking in your sleep, she says. What did I say? She tilts her head. Something about a fig uprising. You nod, wiping your face. Sounds right. That morning, someone accidentally spills the blessed vinegar near the helm. The first mate slips on it. The tiller lurches left. For a brief, stupid moment, the ship faces the wrong direction. Everyone freezes. Themilkat groans. No one move. You grab a handful of olives and drop them on the deck. They bounce once, then land in a perfect circle. She exhales. We're fine. The pit gods accept the sacrifice. You say nothing, but you make a note to bring way more olives next time. Later, while inspecting the cargo, you notice something odd. The jar containing your preserved foam has bloomed. Inside the wax, tiny new bubbles have formed fresh ones. Not part of the original mix. You shake it gently. The foam inside swirls like it's thinking. You go above deck and find Themilkat kneeling near the bow, talking softly to the sea. She doesn't look up when you approach. It's awake, she says, as if the sea has just rolled over in its sleep. You sit beside her, watch the waves. Small white crests form and dissolve, each one saying something you're not yet fluent in. You want to ask her if the olive pit omen still counts, if the foam can override it, if dreams of sentient figs are a normal part of merchant life. But instead, you just ask, are we going the right way? She tilts her head, watches a gull dive, skim the surface, and rise again, droplets trailing like stars. Yes, she says, but it'll cost us. What? Something's going to want a toll. You don't ask what, because some things are better left to the olives. You wake before sunrise to the soft creaking of the ship and the sound of something gently sloshing against wood. For a moment, it's peaceful, dreamlike. Then you remember the jar of salt, the sacred salt, the one you specifically stashed under your bunk to ward off sea spirits, spoilage, and that creepy feeling that your left shoe had been judging you lately. The jar is leaking. You kneel, groggy, peering beneath the plank. A soft crust of white spreads in a ring around the broken lid. Your fingers touch the salt still dry on the outside, but oddly warm. You lift the jar and find a thin crack, too perfect to be accidental. It's as though something inside wanted to get out. You glance around. The rest of your berth is in place. Your wax tablets, your amulet, your stylus, your emergency figs, but the jar that was blessed salt, taken from a coastal temple, purified under moonlight, whispered over by 3 generations of priestesses and a goat. It's not supposed to break. Themilkat, of course, has theories. You find her already awake, cross-legged near the stern, feeding tiny crumbs to a clay snake figurine perched atop a coil of rope. Sea-touched salt, she says when you show her the jar. Is that good or bad? Mostly bad. salt's supposed to absorb. If it leaks, it means it's full. Full of what? She shrugs. Intent. Right? That clears it up. She sprinkles some of your spilled salt in a circle around the snake charm. Then, in a slightly more helpful tone, explains, salt binds spirits. If it's cracked, something you bound got loose, or something you kept out got in. Great, you mutter. Any suggestions? She thinks for a moment, then points to a coil of rope. Wrap this around your bunk. Sleep inside it, like a salted snake nest. Exactly, but with less hissing. You do as told. That night, your dreams are mostly quiet, except for the brief moment when the sea whispered a riddle about fish taxes and your grandmother's voice told you to stop drinking date wine before bed. The next morning, you feel better, protected. Somehow, even the air seems crisper. The sky is the soft pink of a well-fed cloud. The sea stretches glassy and calm. Then someone screams. You rush to the cargo hold. One of the younger sailors, a reed-thin boy from Utica with a nervous cough and too many earrings, points to a crate near the stern. Inside, your snake charm. But this one isn't clay. It's real, coiled, sleeping, breathing. Your first instinct is to panic. Your second is to burn the ship. The third, and the one you go with, is to call Themilcat. She arrives calmly, looks inside the crate, and tilts her head. Oh, she says, that's a good sign. A live snake is a good sign. Yes, it's a water guardian. You glance into the crate. The snake flicks its tongue once, then resumes its nap atop a bolt of wool dyed dark purple. Very expensive, very occupied. You lower your voice. Do we let it stay? Of course, she says. Snakes at sea mean the gods are watching closely. You nod slowly. So, not cursed. Probably not. Unless it talks. You stare at the snake. It does not talk. Yet, later that afternoon, your first mate tosses a chunk of salted fish near the prow. The snake slithers up slow, sleepy, and swallows it whole. Then it curls beside the tiller like it owns the place. The crew is mixed on the omen. Some believe a ship with a snake guardian sails faster. Others mutter about sea ghosts and bad luck. One man insists his cousin's ship found a snake and was swallowed by a wave the next day. But that cousin also stored olives next to iron, so no one really listens to him anymore. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian sailors truly believed in sea snake guardians, or if these creatures were simply hitchhikers mistaken for divine agents. Either way, few dared to disturb one. The snake stays. You name it. Rafash, an old Punic word for coiled one. But also, coincidentally, the name of a Carthaginian accountant famous for falling asleep during budget meetings. Fitting. You make space in the ship's log for it. Day 12. Cargo holds steady. Wind favorable. Snake sleeping. Olive pits neutral. Later that night, the moon rises thick and yellow. Rafash slithers to the edge of the ship, stares at the water for a long moment, and then turns back, curling tightly beneath the foam bowl like it belongs there. You find this oddly reassuring. You still keep salt near your bunk, and a ring of rope, and a small bell made of bronze and superstition, but you sleep deeply that night. Even when the foam in the bowl begins to pulse, even when the snake blinks once slowly, deliberately, and hums just once, a single low, satisfied sound. By the next morning, the wind has picked up, not angry, just purposeful. The sails billow with a sound like slow applause, and the ropes hum faintly under strain. You stand at the bow, watching the sky stretch wide and cloudless. It feels like the sea is preparing to say something important. This is the part of the voyage where things get ceremonial again. Themilcat appears just after sunrise, arms full of cloth, feathers, and a small stone bowl filled with what looks like crushed mint and crushed hope. We need to call the wind properly, she says, as if the sails didn't already catch it. I thought it was already here, you reply. She clicks her tongue. It's not just wind, it's Tanit's wind. Ah, that explains the feathers. Tanit, the Carthaginian goddess of trade, moonlight, fertility, and what one scholar once called general mystical vibes, is the patron of voyages, especially those that risk everything for the chance of returning full. Her hands, open and carved on nearly every sacred stone from here to Gibraltar, symbolize protection and guidance. And also, possibly, please don't die. You help Themilcat set up the ritual. A corner of the deck becomes a temporary shrine. The cloth is white, the feathers tied with copper thread, the mint scattered in a spiral. A dish of seawater rests in the center, already rippling despite the stillness of the ship. Everyone gathers, even Rafash, the snake, who coils on the far end of the altar like he has an invitation. Themilcat begins the chant. Soft syllables first, then louder, rising like wind through reeds. She throws pinches of powdered shell into the air. The particles shimmer, then vanish, absorbed by the air like secrets. Then she speaks directly to the wind. Lady of stars and tide, keeper of womb and wake, lift our sails with clean breath. But speak not in storm. A pause. Then the wind shifts, just slightly. Enough for every rope to creak in unison. Enough for every goosebump on your arm to rise like they've rehearsed. You look up. The sky is the same. The clouds unchanged, but the air feels watched. Your crew doesn't speak for several minutes after the ritual. They walk softer. Even the sailor who laughs in his sleep keeps his jokes to himself. Later, while navigating, you notice something odd. The wind blows against your sail at first, then shifts again, as if correcting its angle, as if it's helping, guiding. You feel it along your spine, in your hands. On the tiller, a presence, subtle but firm. The ship glides smoother now, not faster, just truer, straighter, like the sea is no longer resisting you. That night, you hear stories. As sailors eat their dried figs and chew through olives with suspicion, they start telling tales. The last time Tanit sent wind, one says, "We made it to Gadir in half the time." Another nods. "But half the cargo was soaked in dye when we got there. That's the price. You go faster." But she wants something. Speed costs weight. Someone else adds. You ask the Milcat later quietly, while she watches the sea. "Is it true?" You say. "Does she ask for something?" "Always," she answers. "Sometimes she wants a prayer. Sometimes a charm. Sometimes something you don't realize until you've already given it. Comforting." You glance at Rafash, sleeping beside the foam bowl again. The bubbles tonight are calmer, barely moving. You lean in, and just for a moment, you swear you see a pattern. A set of open hands, like Tanit's symbols, forming then dissolving in the foam. You rub your eyes. Themilcat is watching you again. Always watching. She's listening. She says softly, "I thought the wind spoke." She smiles. It does. But it also remembers. You lie awake longer that night, lulled not by waves or rocking, but by the soft whisper of the wind weaving through the rigging, repeating syllables you almost recognize. The sea does not sing, but the wind chants. You dream of cliffs lined with statues, all of them bearing Tanit's symbol, open hands, reaching, not to take, not to warn, to welcome. And above the cliffs, the foam doesn't curl into spirals, it lifts, like steam, pulled skyward by invisible hands. In your dream, you follow it, and the wind laughs low and kind. Maps in your world don't behave like maps in ours. They aren't neat grids of measured coordinates. They're wrinkled hides, fraying at the corners, covered in squiggles and symbols drawn by men who saw things they could barely explain. You unroll one now across a crate, pinning the edges with stones, and immediately spot 3 coffee stains and what might be a doodle of a very angry fish. This is how you navigate, with rumors, lines drawn by hearsay, arrows carved by men who claim to outrun storms by sailing straight through them. Place names written in 4 scripts, none of them complete. Some ports are marked with stars, others with exclamation marks. 1. Simply, with a frowny face, you drag your finger along the western route toward Gadir, passing places more whispered about than known. 2 Wave Island, the Bay of Loud Shells, where the wind reverses. These are not places on any modern atlas, but they were very real to Carthaginian merchants. You check the wind. Still steady, the sky is pale and high. You call over your second mate, a wiry man who smells permanently of lemon peel and wet rope. Together, you go over the plan. There's no compass, only sun position, star shapes, and, most crucially, foam readings. Yes, again with the foam. Every morning, Themilcat skims the sea surface, collects a fresh bowl, and studies the patterns like she's reading tea leaves at a storm's wedding. You've tried to read it yourself. All you ever see is foam. White, soft, wet. But she sees direction. Today, she points at a particularly chaotic cluster. Turn slightly south. You blink. South, Do it. You do. Historians still argue whether these foam interpretations were navigational tools masked as religious ritual or truly believed to be divine instruction. Some evidence suggests Carthaginian sailors passed down oral codes for foam movement. Clockwise swirls near dusk mean reefs, jagged edges, shallow sandbars. A persistent lacy trail, follow it. Something wants you to. You steer south, just slightly. The sea opens into a quieter patch, almost too quiet. The air flattens. The sky loses its blue, graying just enough to give you that unpleasant awareness of time slowing down. That's when the stories begin again. The crew calls this patch the Silk Wake. It's not on any map, but they all know it. A place where your oars seem heavier, where voices carry strangely, where sea foam stretches behind the ship in long, unbreaking threads, as if the sea is knitting something behind you. You look back. Sure enough, the foam trailing your hull is straight, unbroken, a narrow line of lace across the sea. You ever see that before? You ask the Milcat. She squints, then looks slightly unnerved. That's a trail. A trail. Something's following us. You glance behind the ship. Nothing. Just ocean and sky. Not a ship. She says, something else. Maybe wind, maybe memory. You look at the map again. There's no name for this stretch, but someone years ago scratched a symbol here. It looks like a fish hook or a spiral unraveling. The foam behind you stays perfect. A white ribbon, taut, delicate, persistent. That night, the crew is quieter. Someone plays a soft melody on a reed pipe. The Milcat brews a strong tea from dried lemon leaves and fennel, claiming it keeps dreams away. You sip it, grateful, but dreams come anyway. You're walking through a city carved entirely of salt. The streets crunch under your feet. Every building is faceted, glistening. The sky above is black, starless. At the center of the city, a massive bowl, the size of an amphitheater, filled with sea foam. It churns, shapes form, and then you see it. A line, a foam trail, straight and endless. You follow it. The foam rises, forms words, in a language you don't recognize, but somehow you understand. All voyages are remembered, even by the water. You wake with salt on your lips. The next morning, the trail's still there. The wind hasn't changed, but the map now seems smaller, like the sea is choosing your path, not you. The Milcat joins you at the stern, watching the trail. You still think we're headed for Gadir. You ask. She shrugs. The foam says yes. You watch it for a long time. Then you whisper, what if it's lying? She doesn't answer. The foam stretches on. By now, you've been sailing long enough for your skin to smell like rope, and for your thoughts to hum in rhythm with the waves. You've developed sea legs, sea habits, and possibly sea madness, though that's still under quiet observation. The foam trail behind your ship persists, always straight, always slightly too deliberate. It's like being followed by handwriting. You can't read but somehow know is about you. Then, on the morning of the 11th day, you reach the place everyone pretends isn't on the map. The Bay of Three Echoes. You'd laugh at the name if the crew didn't go so unsettlingly quiet when you mentioned it at breakfast. The Milcat even paused halfway through blessing a fig. She set her bowl down and simply said, do not speak more than once in that place. Why? Because something will speak back. So, naturally, you're here. The sea has shifted its color darker, its surface more brittle, like it could crack. The wind softens to a whisper, as if it's sneaking through the rigging. The sky stays blue, but in that pale, metallic way that makes you squint and feel watched. You sail between two jagged cliffs, tall, volcanic, streaked with reddish stains that look disturbingly like dried blood. Though the Milcat assures you it's just oxidized iron. Probably, she adds. The foam here changes, no longer smooth or bubbly. It clings, strings itself out in long threads across the rocks and the ship's hull. It almost resists your movement, as if the water doesn't want you here. The first echo happens at midday. You call out to a sailor across the deck, tie that tighter. A beat later, the same words float back, but the voice isn't yours, and it's too calm, too even, like someone imitating you badly. Everyone stops moving. No one says a word for the next hour. The second echo happens when a pot crashes in the galley. The cook curses, loudly, vividly, 2 minutes later, the exact same curse spills out again from nowhere, spoken in a voice no one recognizes. The crew looks at you like you brought this place here. You look at Themilkit. Echo spirits, she says. This bay is full of them. They borrow sounds, test them, sometimes return them. Are they dangerous? She shrugs. Depends what you give them. Historians still argue whether the Bay of Three Echoes was a known geographical feature or a myth sewn into trader lore to discourage landings near certain rocky coves. Some claim the echo phenomenon was just clever acoustics bouncing off the cliffs. Others insist the foam here carries memories, ancient sounds, recorded and replayed in the surf. You sail deeper in. Slowly, the ship moves as if underwater, like something invisible is gripping the hull. A gull screams above. A second later, the exact same scream, then a third. It is not like normal echoes. There's a gap, a pause, like the sea is listening, then choosing when to repeat. And then it happens. Someone sneezes, and the echo returns. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, all in a row, exactly the same, exactly spaced. By now, half the crew has taken a vow of silence. The other half is pretending they don't hear the whispers curling in the foam. You lean over the rail. The foam is thicker here, almost gluey. It stretches in long, transparent strands. You try to lift some on a stick, but it pulls back, almost like it's resisting being removed. You drop the stick, and then you hear it, your own voice, very softly. From the water, do not leave. You stare at the foam. Themilkit is instantly beside you. She grabs a pouch of powdered copper, throws it overboard. It hisses and fizzes on the water like a fire being extinguished. The foam recedes. The ship rocks forward gently as if being released. You sail on. Silence returns, thick and wary. The cliffs begin to thin behind you, and the wind creeps back in, humble and careful. The foam returns to normal, bubbly, innocent. Just foam again. No more echoes. The crew exhales in a collective shudder. You gather everyone that evening for a cleansing ritual, saltwater rinses, fig leaf smoke, and Themilkit's song, which she sings backward. She doesn't explain why. You don't ask. That night, you fall asleep with cotton in your ears and a rope circle around your bed. The dreams still come. You walk through a cove made entirely of sound. Every footstep echoes after you take it. Voices whisper just ahead of your path, pulling you forward. The foam on the shore forms words again. This time, you understand them. All voices are remembered, even those not meant to be heard. You wake with your voice hoarse, and the unmistakable feeling that someone or something has been trying out your voice while you slept. You say nothing the rest of the day, just to be safe. By the time you reach Gadir, the foam has changed again. It no longer trails behind you in a line, nor clings to the hull like anxious sea silk. It gathers in soft rings around the bow each morning, as if the ocean is preparing a landing mat. Themilkit says nothing about it. She just watches the water and hums a tune no one else knows. Gadir appears slowly, rising from the sea mist like a story you're not sure you remember correctly. Today, we call it Cadiz. Back then, it was the end of the known world, the far western outpost of the Carthaginian trade empire. Past this, just wind and whales, and maybe a waterfall that fell off the edge of the earth. The city smells different from Carthage. Less spice, more fish. The buildings are shorter. Everything is wind-chapped and sun-bleached, like it's been gently sanded by centuries of salty air. The docks are busy, busier than you expected. There's a whole row of ships unloading copper, tin, hides, and something that smells like fermented goat yogurt, but could also be a perfume. You dock near a cluster of warehouses shaped like upside-down bowls. A priest in a red robe waits with a shell staff and a scroll. He eyes your ship, your crew, your foam bowl, and gives a knowing nod. Carthaginian, he says. You nod. He gestures toward the temple up the hill. You brought offerings. You do. But in Gadir, rituals are even more theatrical than back home. Here, the foam readings are a public event complete with bells, colored smoke, and priests who stir the foam with golden pins under the full moon. You've heard stories about it. You thought they were exaggerating. They weren't. At sunset, you're escorted up the winding stone path to the Temple of Melkart, the city's guardian god and close cousin of Baal Hammon. It sits above the port like a sunburnt crown. draped in banners and gulls. You carry your offering crate carefully, reverently. The crew follows at a respectful distance, even Rafash, your ship's honorary snake, is tucked into a basket laced with cooling herbs. The temple plaza is already crowded. Merchants, sailors, priests, and a few goats in ceremonial harnesses all wait around a large stone basin, carved with waves, foam swirls, and faces that stare too long. This is the foam pit. Yes, that's what it's actually called. You'd laugh if the air weren't so heavy. The local priest takes your preserved foam jar, unseals it, and mixes it with fresh seawater. He uses a long, golden needle more like a wand than a tool to stir the mixture. Then he begins a chant, not in Punic, not in Phoenician, but in the old Western dialect. It sounds like sand moving over shells. The foam begins to react. It flattens first, then ripples, then rises. Everyone leans in. Themilkit stands perfectly still, her gaze locked on this basin like it owes her money. The foam forms a shape. It's a spiral, yes, but tighter, more complex, spiraling inward and outward at once. A double spiral. The crowd murmurs. One of the local priests gasps and crosses himself with a fishbone. What does it mean? You whisper. Themilkit says nothing, but the local priest leans in and says softly, it means you've been followed. You step back. The foam pulses once, just a thump, like a heartbeat, then collapses, flat, quiet, innocent again. The ritual ends with the sacrifice of honeyed bread and 3 sardines tossed to the sea. The crowd disperses slowly, muttering. No one seems panicked, just thoughtful, like something was confirmed rather than revealed. You carry Rafash back to the ship and light a small oil lamp beside the offering crate. Inside, your obsidian mirror is cracked. Your pouch of dye has darkened, no longer purple, but almost black. That night, the wind changes again, not violently, just subtly, the kind of shift that tells you it's time to move. Historians still debate what role Gadir's elaborate foam rites played in trade policy. Some say they were just an economic performance, a way to impress merchants and intimidate rivals. Others believe these rituals were part of an old, lost navigational system, one based not on stars, but on the sea's memory. A memory stored in foam, in tides, in echoes. Before you leave, the head priest gifts you a small token, a stone disc with concentric spirals carved on both sides. It's smooth, cool, and clearly very old. It belonged to a sailor, he says, one who returned when he shouldn't have. You take it. You don't ask. As you board the ship again, you notice something waiting at the prow, a fresh coil of foam. Perfectly symmetrical, shaped like 2 open hands, Tanit's sign, or someone else's. You don't talk much on the return journey, not out loud, not even among the crew. Everyone moves quietly now, as if raising their voice might wake something in the hull. Or the water, the wind is calm, obliging. The stars align. The sea is generous. Everything should feel perfect. But you remember the reading in Gadir, the double spiral. You've been followed, and it's not paranoia when your own foam agrees. Each morning now, you find a new pattern along the deck rails. Sea foam, yes, but placed, not formed. It clings in deliberate shapes, spirals, loops, once even a set of 5 perfect dots and a cross. You clean them off. They return. Always before sunrise, always silent. Themilkit is no longer humming. She spends long hours staring into the bowl of preserved foam from Carthage. It no longer bubbles. It just vibrates. Not constantly, just when no one's watching directly. One evening, as the sun sinks into the horizon and paints the sea orange, you sit beside her. Is it a spirit? You ask. No, she says. You wait. It's not following us. It's remembering us. You nod slowly. Same thing. No, following is curiosity. Remembering is intent. That doesn't make you feel better. She hands you the stone disc from Gadir. The spiral glows faintly in the sunset. Not with light, with meaning. The way a word does when you almost remember it. You sleep that night with it in your hand. And you dream. You're back in the foam basin. But this time it's endless. More like a plane than a bowl, shapes rise and dissolve. Symbols form and reform. One cluster spirals into a face, yours. Another forms a ship, then another. The fleet grows, ships without sails, without crews, just vessels. And then you see it, a hand reaching up from below the foam, not made of flesh, but of bubbles, reaching for the ship, for you. You wake with your hand clenched so tight around the spiral token that your fingers ache. The next day, the wind shifts sharply, not against you, just around you. You lower the sails slightly, adjust course, and realize you're off track. By a lot. You check the stars. Confirmed. Themilkat's foam bowl is already active. Without any ritual, it started to swirl on its own. She looks into it and frowns. Something wants us to go back. To Gadir. She shakes her head. To where it found us. You think back. The Bay of Three Echoes. The Silk Wake. But no, you know what she means. The sea wants you back in Carthage. It wants to complete the memory. You order the tillers shifted. Replot the course. Retrace the foam lines you left behind, though the sea has long since washed them away. Your first mate pulls you aside that night. I need to ask. He says, do you believe this? The foam, the remembering. You hesitate. He holds up a wax tablet. It's covered in sketches he made, foam shapes that appeared during Night Watch. Every single one matches something you've already seen. The sea isn't random, he says, and you nod. Because at this point, denying it would feel like lying to the water itself. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian merchants believe the sea to be sentient or simply symbolic, a metaphor for risk, fortune, fate. But none of them sailed with a priestess whose foam bowls knew your birthday and your fears. That night, you notice Rafash, your ship's guardian snake, has curled around the spiral disc while he sleeps. His scales shimmer slightly in the moonlight, and the disc hums faintly, like a tuning fork hit underwater. The sea is quiet. Too quiet. You rise and walk the deck. The foam at the bow has returned. It curls into a perfect crescent like the olive pit on your breakfast plate all those days ago. You hear something in the foam, not a voice, a question, a pressure behind your ears. It wants to know, what did you learn? You don't answer. You just stand there, one hand on the rail, the other around the spiral token, and you whisper a single word into the dark. Almost. The wind returns. The foam flattens. The ship sails on, and somewhere, far below, the sea nods. You arrive in Carthage to an eerie silence. Not literal. They're still shouting at the docks. The clatter of hooves. The squawk of seagulls who never learned manners. But you feel it in the bones of the ship. In the sails that refuse to flap, in the way the harbor foam doesn't rise to greet you. Your return should be triumphant. You didn't just survive, you succeeded. You traded well. You brought back goods, knowledge, stories. But the sea didn't forget, and it hasn't stopped watching. As your ship slips back into the circular Chthon, you notice that every other vessel, dozens of them, is moored just a bit farther apart than usual, as if they're giving you space. Or distance. The foam rings your hull before you even reach the dock. It's not natural. It gathers too quickly, forms too deliberately. A thick collar of it swirls near the bow, like a ritual that started without you. The harbor priest is waiting, not the usual young novice with a nervous clipboard. This one is older, weathered, robes stained with salt and red dye, eyes that have read too much foam and not liked most of it. He doesn't smile when he sees you, just nods once. You returned, he says. You nod back. He gestures at the foam, and it remembered. Themilkat steps off the ship before anyone else, carrying the spiral disc wrapped in a length of damp linen. She doesn't bow, doesn't speak, just places it in the priest's hand. He studies it, then looks at you. It turned over. You nod. Twice. He lets out a slow breath. Then you brought something back. Just trade goods. You lie. He smiles without humor. Of course. Historians still argue whether bringing something back meant cargo, information, or something more abstract like the sea's attention. In Carthaginian records, there are entries that simply read, returned, foam followed, memory engaged, no follow-up, no explanation. Just that. The foam at the dock thickens. You order the crew to unload the ship carefully, respectfully. One man steps too close to the foam ring and slips. He's fine. Just a bruised shin and a fouled tunic. But the way the foam absorbs the splash unnerves you. It takes the water, drinks it like thirst. You don't tell anyone. Instead, you climb the steps to the upper quay, where the city overlooks the harbor. From here, you see Carthage spread out sun-bleached walls, white domes, purple market stalls, the glint of distant Murex dye vats, your home, your origin, and possibly your seaborne shadow. Themilkit joins you, watching the ships. The foam will recede, she says. Eventually, you sound unsure. It doesn't always forget. Below, the workers chant over the sacred cargo. The obsidian mirror is taken to a temple. The dye is buried for purification. The snake, Rafash, is still sleeping in a coil beside the helm like he never left. He hasn't stirred since you passed the harbor gates. You wonder if he knows something's waiting. You wonder if you do. The priest from earlier returns, this time with a bowl of red clay foam. Harbor foam mixed with wine. He holds it out. You're supposed to look. You do. Inside, your ship, not a vision of it. An actual, perfect miniature, crafted in foam. The sail flutters. The hull leans. A tiny spiral turns beneath it. Then it sinks, straight down. The foam swallows it. The priest stirs once, breaking the image, then pours the bowl out over the dock's edge. It's done, he says. What is, you ask? The memory. He walks away without explaining. You return to the ship. The crew is eating, laughing, tired, yes, but alive. They've already started retelling the voyage like a grand tale. Even the Bay of Three Echoes has become something to joke about now. Echoes and figs and foam monsters. You're glad they don't understand. That night, alone in your quarters, you unwrap the last item from your offering crate. Not the dye, not the mirror. The foam jar, still sealed, still cool to the touch. You uncap it. Inside, the foam is gone. In its place, still water, silent. Clear. At the bottom, a single spiral etched into the wax lining. You touch it. It's warm. And then, the water ripples, just once. No breeze, no tremor, just acknowledgement. And you understand. You didn't bring anything back. You are what came back. You don't sail again for a while. That's unusual. Carthaginian merchants don't pause. You've known captains who died with one hand on the tiller, and the other still haggling over the price of cedar. But you, after this voyage, you just stop. Not from fear, not quite. It's more like reverence. Like you've spoken with something large and liquid and older than God. You spend your days walking the harbor edge, watching ships come and go. You nod at captains who wave, but you don't step aboard your own vessel. Your fast galley that took you to Gaudier and back sits roped and quiet. Its wood dries, sighs. The crew has moved on. Even Rafash the snake has vanished, his nest empty but still warm. The foam is still there, though not in great coils or symbols now, just hints, clinging to the steps of the Carthon, curling under baskets. Once, you find a thin ring of it inside a sealed amphora. You start keeping a wax tablet full of sketches, foam shapes, foam positions, foam moods. It has moods. You're sure of it. Some days it's anxious, some days it's bored. Once, you're fairly certain it tried to spell your name in Phoenician. Themilkit visits occasionally. She never explains anything, just brings citrus or salted almonds and sits beside you. One morning, she brings a small bowl. You know what's in it before she lifts the lid. Foam. Fresh, pale, almost shimmering. She sets it between you. It doesn't move. It's quiet. She says, "Is that good?" It means you've settled into its memory. You blink at her. Its memory. The seas. Then what happens now? She shrugs. That's up to it. Historians still debate the long-term impact of ritual foam reading on Carthaginian trade. Some suggest it helped systematize risk, the way modern sailors use weather charts. Others think it served as psychological scaffolding, allowing people to surrender decisions to a force outside themselves. A few fringe scholars go further, claiming the foam wasn't just symbolic, but reactive, that it learned. You begin to believe that too. One day, you walk through the marketplace and a child hands you a small clay charm, a spiral inside a hand. For luck, she says. The sea likes spirals. You take it, turn it over. It's not new. It's weathered, faded. A tiny smear of dried salt still clings to one side. You return home and place it beside the cracked obsidian mirror from your voyage. The mirror hasn't reflected properly since Gaudier. It shows only shapes now, swirls, moving things that aren't you. You stop lighting lamps at night. You stop dreaming. Not because you're afraid, because there's nothing new. The sea can show you in sleep that it hasn't already shown you in foam. One morning, while chewing date bread on the dock, you feel the wind change. It's soft, gentle, but deliberate. You follow it, not out of duty, not out of habit, out of recognition. You walk past the Carthaginian, past the market, past the granaries and walls, down the long, rocky slope to the hidden cove beneath Tanit's cliff shrine. And there, in the tide pool where fishermen leave offerings, is a foam spiral. Your spiral. No one could have placed it there. It's too remote, too precise. It forms, holds, waits. You kneel, touch it, and hear not a voice, but a sensation, a memory that isn't yours. Something deep and old and slow. It asks no questions. It gives no answers. It simply acknowledges that you exist, that it remembers you. And in that moment, as the foam flattens, you feel something in your chest ease like a knot untied. You breathe deeply, stand, and walk back up the hill. There's still time to sail again, but not just yet. For now, the sea is full, and you are part of it. The seasons begin to shift. Carthage heats, then cools, then heats again because the sun here never really lets go. You spend more time at the harbor, now not just as a merchant but something closer to an observer. A quiet oracle with sunburnt shoulders and salt in your beard. People greet you differently these days. Fewer jokes, more nods. You still haven't told anyone what happened. Not fully. Not even the Milket. And she, wise as ever, never presses. Sometimes she sits with you by the harbor steps, each of you with your own bowl. Not to read, just to hold. Foam settles differently in silence. It ripples, it breathes. And now, when you look into it, you see not omens but recognition. You are no longer waiting for signs. You are part of the pattern now. One day, a young captain approaches, nervous. She's got a ship, new, fine lines, clean hull. She asks you if it's a good day to sail west. You smile, gently. Show me your foam. You say, she does, carefully, respectfully. You look, no spirals, no breaks, just calm, clean rings. You nod. Yes, it's ready for you. She grins, thanks you, and hurries off. You don't tell her to watch for voices in the water or to tie her olive jars far from iron. She'll learn, or she won't. Either way, the sea remembers. Historians will one day find your name in a ledger, a handful of tablets, one incomplete contract for copper, a receipt for fig wine. Nothing special, but if they dig near the temple steps, if they look in the hollows where tide pools gather, and the sea dries to a crust, they might find your spiral, etched softly in the stone, smoothed by waves, just visible enough to whisper. This one listened. Thimoket disappears that winter. Some say she returned to the temple, others say she walked into the sea and never looked back. You believe both. You never stop visiting the shore. You never stop watching the foam. And one day, many years later, you wake to the sound of waves speaking again. Not calling, not demanding, just reminding. You pack your things quietly. One last voyage, not for trade, not for profit, but to return the memory. Because the sea keeps what it's given, and you have something it's still holding space for. You board a small vessel, alone. No crew, no snake, no map, just the wind and the spiral in your hand. You sail west. The foam follows. It doesn't rush. It doesn't warn. It simply waits because you are not lost. You are remembered. The sails grow quiet as the sea settles into stillness. The foam, once restless and full of messages, fades into soft ribbons trailing gently behind the hull. The wind calms to a whisper, barely enough to rustle your tunic or stir the edge of the offering bowl. The sky shifts from gold to deep blue, the sun dipping low behind the curve of the horizon. You lean back against the wooden rail, feeling its warmth slowly cool beneath your palms. The sounds around you are soft now, wood creaking, water lapping, the occasional call of a distant gull. Everything slows, everything listens. The spiral in your hand has long since stopped pulsing. It rests cool and smooth, a memory made solid, a mark of something vast and watchful. You close your fingers around it, just once. Before tucking it away, you breathe deeply. The air is salt-sweet, touched by the faint scent of figs and distant smoke. The sea rocks you gently. The stars begin to blink awake, first one, Then 3. Then a full shimmer. You feel your shoulders loosen, your breath deepen, your thoughts blur. The sea remembers, but it also forgives. You're not sailing anymore. You're floating, cradled. Nothing to chase, nothing to prove. Just water, just time. And foam that no longer asks questions. Your eyes grow heavy. Your hands rest easy. And as the last sounds of the day drift away, waves, creaks, wind, you let yourself go still. The sea hums its old, wordless lullaby. And you sleep.